Hi, everybody. I'm Jason. This is my podcast, Filmography Club. Welcome to it. Look, I talk about movies with my guests on this podcast. That's the whole point. Sometimes my guests are movie experts who I'm just meeting for the first time. Sometimes they're friends of mine who may not be movie experts, but they're bright enough to articulate themselves about their favorite movie. And sometimes my guest is both a friend and an expert, and that's Maggie Lyon. Maggie and I go back a long time. We met and hit it off in the late 90s, and then life stuff happened like it always does, and we haven't lived in the same state in maybe 20 years. We've managed to stay in touch here and there, offering congratulations and condolences when appropriate. After earning her undergrad at Millsaps, she attended New York University. That's where she earned her graduate degree in cinema studies. It's been a while since we had a chance to talk, so it was nice to have a drink and talk about this fascinating movie with her. There's a lot to talk about with this movie, so I won't describe it here. We get into that pretty quickly, but it is a French musical from the 60s. I'll say that. So if you want to hear two old friends wrap their Mississippi accents around frilly French words while having afternoon cocktails, this episode is for you. So here it is, my talk with Maggie Lyon about Jacques Demy's third feature-length film, 1964's musical romantic drama, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
Une heure, si maman ne dort pas, oh là, qu'est-ce que je vais entendre? Je devrais me maquiller, tu ne trouves pas?
Non, tu es très jolie comme ça.
And I'm joined by Maggie Lyon. Maggie, thanks for coming on.
Hello.
It's great to have you on here. I've been wanting to get you on here for a minute. Today, we're talking about one of your favorite movies. You have a spiel, right? You have a thing about this. We're talking about, I'm going to fuck the name up. Is it Cherbourg? Cherbourg?
Umbrellas of Cherbourg. Like if you said it in French, Les Parapluies de Cherbourg. But, I'm still from Mississippi. And when I learned French in junior high and high school, it was from someone who was from Mississippi. So
Right.
I have a child in French immersion who corrects me all the time about how terribly I pronounce things in French. So I would just not feel too concerned about it at all. But yeah, this is one of my favorite movies. And I would definitely say that, sorry, Will Fox, that I didn't pick Mad Max before you. It's a fun one. Fury Road is fun. I have a lot of things that I also love. Like if you asked me what my favorite horror movie is, like probably Martyrs. If you asked me what my favorite movie from the 2000s is, I would probably say Requiem for a Dream. It's like, but if you asked what my favorite movie is, it's probably Umbrellas. Yeah, I just love it. I can't help it. I'm drawn back to it every time. It's great.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it. When you texted me the name of the movie, I had to Google it. And then after just digging around a little bit, I realized, this is not some obscure movie that she just picked. This is a very highly acclaimed film. And
yeah.
There was a little trepidation on my part, I must admit. I'm not a musicals guy. I don't love musicals. I find that they kind of pull me out of the narrative. They're not why I go to the movies or went to the movies. But this one was different. And that's not to say that all of them are garbage, by the way. I haven't seen a musical, excluding this one, probably since Grease aired on cable television or network television in 1986. And I don't even remember that one, really. So this was new for me. And I just said, you know what, just watch the thing. You might enjoy it. And Maggie, I enjoyed it. It was...
Yeah, it's definitely its own thing. And that's kind of the whole point of why I love it and why I think it's so good. But by the way, thank you for having me on. This is my first podcast, by the way.
Is that right?
Ever.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
I've never been on a podcast.
It's something that we need to unpack right at the beginning. This is not a dramatic or comedic story where people break into song and dance here and there. And I thought that's what I was getting into.
Nope.
This whole thing, all 91 minutes are sung. Even the most mundane, hey, can you hand me my keys kind of dialogue is sung. But
pass the salt.
It's totally immersive. And
yep.
I liked it. I really enjoyed it.
It's the complete immersion thing is like what I try to explain to my kids about willing suspension of disbelief. Like, you talk about it all the time, like with any sort of fiction, like you have to talk about willing suspension of disbelief. And it's this thing that you assume that people understand, but then when you go this far with it, it's like you've taken it to the maximum, like you've turned it up to 11, right? I feel like the cool thing about this is that you really pushed the whole form into what it can possibly be, right? So I feel like, did you watch the Criterion stuff that you were talking about?
Yeah,
like
I watched all the supplements. I started
all
listening.
of them.
I did. It wasn't that much. Yeah, I didn't listen to the audio interviews. I got about halfway through the first one and said, I'm good.
So we ended up we watched the documentary about the film and the interview of like with Legrand and Demy, which was like the Frenchest thing I've ever seen. It's like, you know, like, oh, they're going to cut back to like Legrand, like playing the piano for all this time. And then they just harass the crap out of them. Like they just like really just like bomb them with like these terrible questions. Like, do you really think that it's worthwhile to make music for a film instead of being like Mozart?
Right.
Like,
right.
what?
Would Bach and Mozart be doing this if they were alive today?
It's like, do you think that your work is worthwhile? Like, I mean, it was like, whoa, dude. I mean, but all of his responses were really great. But anyway, that's a little off topic from this. But anyway, when they were talking about all of that stuff, it's like the form of the whole thing is so cool because from the beginning, nobody had done that. Like nobody had done it. And still, like, even when people have tried to do it since then, nobody's really done the same thing. Like it's singular. Like this movie is one thing that nobody else has done. And, you know, for what else you have to say about it, like whether you have problems with it or not, like, I don't know. Like, I think it's really intensely creative and just amazing, like what they've done with forming content on this. And that's kind of my whole interest in film generally. Like, you know, like I was a literature person and then got interested in film because I was like, okay, well, film is another form of literature, basically. Like you're just taking this and giving it another dimension. What I loved about literature is what writers do with forming content. And so what I love about film is what that can be in 3D, basically. And just the colors and the things that they do with the just mood and feeling in this movie is just so amazing. And it makes me excited to watch it every time. Also, I just feel like there's so much to see every time you watch it. Like there's something new every time you see it.
So the colors in this movie are big, they're bold, vibrant, lots of, you know, something I was impressed with is the fact that they shot this thing on location. There were no sets used, I don't believe. And if they were minimal. They just had their art department go to these walls and just paint huge, bright fuchsia splashes across the wall, like up 2 stories of it. The apartment that his aunt lives in, that Guy lives in with his aunt, with the blues, just gorgeous. The use of color is just absolutely amazing in this. And I think they finally I don't even know the terminology here, Maggie, but they remastered the colors or something. They made the movie watchable again after years. Right. The movie just kind of got washed out and it had a really dull look to it. And they finally went back and fixed that up sometime in the last 20 years, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And then the thing that I love about it is just, so when you come into even the premise, basically, right? Like the idea of a place that's so rainy that it can support an entire store dedicated to an umbrella shop, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be this whole gray dripping with just like this like French malaise, right? But then as soon as the movie opens, you get these like bright pops of color because the umbrellas are bright, right? Like people have decided to purchase not a black umbrella. They purchased an orange umbrella or a neon pink umbrella. But like they're like acid trip colors. They're like bright colors, right? It's that like juxtaposition of like the really bright colors that are part of the wallpaper and just kind of everything that they wear, whether it's the actual clothes to the even the little stuff that Genevieve wears in her hair, whether it's a ribbon or a sash or anything, like everything is so bright and filled with like life, right? And so you're exposed to this sort of composition all the time where it's like the gray of the water and the rain and the sadness of life, whether the sadness of life is actual sadness like war and star-crossed lovers, or actual literal rain, and then the brightness that it's against. And so then you have to kind of decide, like, what are they doing with this? And the really cool thing about watching that documentary that's part of the DVD that this was on is the director talks about how he really wanted to do something amazing. Like he wanted to do something different and amazing. And he was like, oh, I want to make people cry. It's like, well, that sounds like a really shitty thing to say. But at the same time, like, like trying to get a response from people, like that's a cool thing to want to do. Like trying to get a visceral reaction, like right. That's worthwhile. Like that's what you want from any kind of film. Like you want a visceral reaction, whether, like I was talking about horror earlier, like if you're watching a scary movie, you want to be scared. You want you're going to tense up. You want to have that visceral reaction. If you're watching a comedy, you want people to laugh, right? And so if you're watching this kind of movie, you want people to cry. So I think it makes sense. And that's his goal in this. And making it in this way is so moving and so amazing. And he does a really good job. So I think. And
that's what did it for me. That's what made me appreciate this movie, because when I watched it, I almost don't feel like I watched a movie. I mean, yes, clearly I knew in my brain that I was watching a movie, that I was on my couch in an otherwise dark room looking at a screen for an hour and a half. I got that.
Right.
But I mean, this is unlike anything. It's not.
So
I almost feel like we should be singing this entire conversation that we're having. I feel like we're cheating in a way. We're not doing the film justice.
I know.
But, the thing that got me with this movie, the thing that made me really appreciate it as it is a movie, and I'm aware that it's a movie as I watch it, but like in the supplementals, when Demi was talking about how when he was trying to get it financed, people wanted it to be black and white, or they wanted him to change the name. Right. Yeah. And of course they wanted them to get rid of to get rid of the whole singing thing, which if you did all that.
Like die in a fire. No.
Right. Yeah. But if this movie were black and white, and if it did have a title that actually kind of hinted at what you were getting into, and if all the dialogue was spoken and not sung, it would be a fine story. It would be fine.
It wouldn't be this.
It would not be this. And you and I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now talking about it 50 some odd years later.
Yeah.
That's what truly elevated this whole thing. It's a serviceable, it's a fun screenplay.
Right.
But once you add all the bells and whistles to it, it turned it into something special.
Spectacular. Yeah. Rain is difficult to shoot, and they do a really good job with that. And singing everything is difficult to manage too. And they did a really good job with that too. Like they just make everything worthwhile. Like every single part of it seems necessary. Like all of it I appreciate. And the really cool thing about coming back to the whole thing about like how you see the gray and the bad, and then you get like kind of bombarded by the like pops of color and everything. It's like, I don't know. It's like ABBA. If you work out to ABBA, Like it's upbeat. It's great. It's upbeat, but it's still like really sad. Like, so you can get on the elliptical and like rock out to ABBA, but it's still super sad. And it's like, oh, okay, this time here that I'm spending is worthwhile because I'm also working out and like it's sad. And it's like, they're doing the same thing in that. They're showing you something that's like really fun to look at. Like it's very enjoyable to watch. Submersing yourself in the film is really enjoyable. But at the same time, it is sad and it is heavy and like it has all those things. So it's kind of like balancing itself out. It's really cool.
The use of lighting in this movie is professional, which was weird for the whole new wave of French cinema, at least to me. I think this was his third film.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you watched the supplementals. I mean, what was the Lola was just all natural lighting, and it was black and white, and just sometimes people are just 80% obscured. And that's just, and the blocking just doesn't seem to even exist at all. Whereas this all felt very tight, very precise. The lighting was just, you want to light up those big, bold colors, so that the lighting was just there.
Well, everything had to be really precise, right? Because all of the music was recorded before, right?
Right.
So
I did not know that watching the movie until I watched the supplemental
very
stuff.
Convincing, right?
I wasn't sure. In fact, the whole time I was watching, I was like, did they write the music first and then they just I always
feel like that with animation. It's like, oh, do they think about what the animated character looks like and the faces they would make? And that's interesting. But yeah, for this one, they did have the whole soundtrack was recorded and the actors were not singing.
Right.
And they had to match to that track. So,
this was a very collaborative effort, because usually you want to heap accolades on actors and directors. Sure, and of course they deserve that. But just as much as that, the voice cast, the people doing the actual singing deserve a shout out. Oh my gosh. I would read their names. They're right in front of me, but I am definitely a Mississippi boy, and when I'm in my cups, it really shows. and folks, I'm having a drink. So
yeah, me too. Woo. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, that's good. We're having gimlets today, folks. You're having a gimlet, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Delicious.
Yeah.
Just stepping away from the movie for a moment, at least in the narrow sense. When did you first see this movie? Tell me about that.
So I was in film school at NYU, and I was in a class that was focusing on French New Wave. And so we were watching a lot of like Godard and just that whole group that is not really similar to, is this too loud?
No, not at all. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
But anyway, we were watching a lot of stuff that, I mean, technically, if you look at Umbrellas, if you look at Demy generally and compare his work to other works from French New Wave, it's very different. So, it was just included in this class, and I was just like taken aback. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm just overwhelmed by like how cool this is. And then like the next semester, so like 2 months, maybe 2 months later, I was in a class that was focused on the musical. Like that was the name of the class, the musical. And I mean, we probably watched 20 films, and this was also in that too. And I was just like, this is my movie. This is mine. This is my movie.
Yeah.
Like when people ask you what your favorite movie is and you're a movie person, it's really, really hard, because I have like 1,000 movies that I love. I'm sure you have 1,000 movies you love, right?
Yeah.
But this is the one that I'm always like, if someone hasn't seen it, it makes me hurt inside that they haven't seen it. Like I want to share it with people. Right. And it's with anyone. Like if I was trying to, like I was mentioning earlier, like I love horror movies too. Like if I were going to recommend a horror movie to someone, I couldn't necessarily recommend The Descent or Martyrs to everyone. Right. And even, my other favorite movie, Requiem, like I couldn't necessarily recommend that to everyone either. So
No.
Towards the end, especially.
Yeah, I watched that movie around 20 years ago. And when you sent me these two movies, these two names, I just immediately was like, I don't know what this Umbrella movie is about, but that's what we're doing the episode.
Remember that one? Yeah. So, I mean, like, I know I can tell people about this, and I know that, even if they don't love it, they can enjoy it. Like, you can enjoy watching it, even if you don't love it. Like,
it's almost hard to have a bad time watching it. I mean, again, I'm a pretty, it's just not my wheelhouse, musicals, but I get it. all the way through. The moment they sang the very first opening lines, like, turn the engine over, and just two guys at a mechanic shop having a conversation. Yeah,
it's very.
It's like, oh shit, we're just starting out in song, and we're just gonna ride this thing through, and it's just one long, continuous, fluid experience. It's great. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Is Les Mis like that?
No, I think that there are still spoken parts of pretty much everything. Like, I'm
so
not
this is it.
Yeah. I mean, like, other people have tried to do it and it hasn't really gone over. Right. And, it doesn't go over for everybody. Like, I remember showing this to my cousin, like I was saying, like, when I was in film school, I was watching this like a couple of times over the course of several months. And my cousin came to visit from Texas, and she's in New York, and like, we're doing all these fun things. And I was like, okay, well, we need to have like a calm night in for one of these nights. And I was like, you need to watch this movie. I love it. And I showed it to her, and she was like, and as soon as the scene comes up where they're, it's okay. So Geneviève has found out that Guy is going to war, and he's going to go to Algeria, and they have this night where they're both just so upset, and the whole experience is terrible. But at the same time, they're so in love, and like, they're in the street, and I'm sure you know what I'm going to say. Like, they're in this street, and what is actually happening is they are floating. So they're being pulled along.
J'avais tellement peur de ne pas te trouver. Je suis si heureuse d'être avec toi. Maintenant je ris parce que je me rends compte combien je suis bête quand je suis toute seule.
Like on a dolly.
Right.
And my cousin is like laughing hysterically. She's like, this is ridiculous. What am I watching? And this is the beginning of the movie, really.
Oh, no.
And I was like, I hate you. We're not friends anymore.
Yeah, that's the end of Act 1. Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. It's always such a bummer when you try to turn someone on to a movie and they just... I had a 19-year-old girl the other day tell me that Boogie Nights was a bad movie because it was awkward.
It is awkward, but why is that bad?
I don't know. I don't know.
Awkward is the best.
It can be.
Any visceral reaction is good. If it makes you feel awkward, that's a visceral reaction.
Yeah.
That's good. I feel like I turned her around in the end. I forced her to keep watching it and, plied her with more drinks, and it was fine. But at the same time, it's like, she didn't feel like assaulted like she would have if I'd made her watch Martyrs. I guess, I don't know. Like, I don't know if you want to talk like through the actual parts of the film.
Yeah, we can do that. The different acts being broken up into parts, the departure, the absence, and the return.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, I feel like, you have a lot of overhead shots I guess maybe throughout the whole film, but like, I feel like they're more prominent in the beginning.
Yeah, certainly the opening credits are almost exclusively that overhead.
Yeah, but
I was very impressed with the cinematography. Lots of long one-ers. The one with the train as he's leaving for the Algerian War was fantastic. They had to cue with the train actually leaving the station.
Just make me cry every time. I'm just like, oh. Anyway, but yeah, like all the like overhead shots like feel to me like this, I don't know, like this Busby Berkeley feeling without it being intensely comical in that way, in that like sort of musical way. Like it still has all of those feelings of the Busby Berkeley, like overhead shot musical, like it feels like synchronized swimming looks,
Sure.
But it's sad. Like he's figured out a way to make like musical sad, which is like stunning and like kind of appalling, honestly, because like musicals supposed to be like fun, right?
But not a bummer to watch.
Not a bummer to watch either. Yeah.
Just a gorgeous movie to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we've made this clear to the audience. There's no dancing in this movie. It's just singing dialogue in a dramatic story.
There's like a spin around in that one scene at the very beginning before everything turns to crap. And, Guy and Genevieve are in the little bar and they have their drinks. They're tiny little French drinks.
Mm-hmm.
And they've, and he takes her for like one little spin and that is it. And it is definitely not choreographed. It is just like, they just do a little turn. That is the whole thing. That's it. You're right. It's great. It's not a dancing musical. Yeah. I haven't even thought about that. That's amazing, Jason. I haven't even thought about that.
The camera does the dancing in this movie. The camera is constantly in motion. It's very much like a PTA movie that way.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. I haven't even thought about that, but that's crazy. Yeah.
And it's a bummer of a story. We have to talk about the final scene in this movie. It's one of the most... It's realistic in a way that I wasn't expecting. This movie took a very realistic turn because, when people fall in love at that early age, things just are not going to work out. And this movie does not shy away from that at all. It just kind of shows it. And when they have their meeting, they see each other after 4 or 5 years, the awkwardness of the two of them when they lock eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like the whole thing is showing this. I mean, it's not Romeo and Juliet sort of star-crossed lovers. It's a different kind of star-crossed lovers. You get this whole thing where, like, are you familiar with W.H. Auden, the Musée des Beaux-Arts?
I'm not.
Poem? It's like about suffering. They were never wrong. The old masters, how well they understood its human position, how it takes its place while someone else is eating or opening a window or just walking dully along. The things that happen in life, when they happen to you, they seem really important. But when they happen to you, everybody else is still just having their life. They're still just doing their thing around you. And the world
doesn't care.
Yeah, exactly. There are so many times in this movie where you see examples of that, where I don't know if you noticed that, like, I always think of it as the Mardi Gras scene, but it's I guess in France, it's Carnival.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you remember this, but like when they're at Genevieve and her mom are in the shop and the carnival is happening outside. And it's so bright and festive and just like everything in the movie, everything is like so colorful and vibrant. And inside the shop, she's, found out she's pregnant and having a hard time. And Guy is gone. Like her Guy is gone, nobody outside cares. Like nobody outside knows what's going on with her. And it's this whole thing. And that's the whole movie. The whole movie is like that. It's not rare. It's something that happens to everybody, right? Like there are these things in life that happen that affect you and don't affect the whole world. But at the same time, it seems like a huge drama to you. It seems like a huge drama to your family and what's happening with you. And like this whole movie shows that very well in several places. And I think that definitely happens with the carnival scene there. And then also, like you were saying at the end, at the gas station, at the end, it's like, everything else is going on around them. Like we've got, Guy's wife that he's decided to just do that with her.
Maybe settle with.
Yeah, I mean, she's great, whatever, and he has a child and he loves his child and everything's great. And that's happening. But like, that's all going on. And no one else notices. Like the guy who's actually working for Guy at the gas station doesn't know who she is. He doesn't know Genevieve. He doesn't know that child in the car is Guy's child. right? He's just pumping gas, right?
Right.
Which she doesn't pay for, by the way. Just like one of my favorite things.
I'll be damned.
She's like, see ya.
Well, she's raising his kid.
No child support.
Yeah, she's raising his kid. He didn't even want to go meet the kid.
I know, that's so intense. He's like, she's like, you want to go meet her? And he's like,
He just nods. He just nods his head. No. Or shakes his head, rather. Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, just everything's happening around them. And it's this whole huge, intense scene. And it seems like it's just like, it's like nuclear fission versus fusion. It's like instead of exploding out, it explodes in. Like everything like explodes in on them at that moment at the end. Like, right. It's like they just all kind of like, and just like it all kind of comes together and just ends. And it's just like so intense. But at the same time, like, what else would have happened? And it is something that does happen. Like it's not this thing that's crazy in life. It's a thing that happens in life. And I'm sure it happens to a lot of people.
It's very common. Yeah, it's very common. And I'm sure that a lot of that, it's happened to everyone in the audience. And if it hasn't happened to you, it's headed your way. And
but I mean,
when the two of them lock eyes, there's so much history. There's so much regret. Who knows if one of them had seen the other first, would they have even interacted? But once they lock eyes and they're right there, the social contract kicks in and you kind of have to.
Yeah.
And it was an extremely awkward conversation.
You've had this whole experience where the entire movie, you've got rain. And then instead of like at the beginning, you have rain. And then after that, you have a lot of just like clear skies throughout the movie. And then at the end, you have snow. And so it feels like sort of a bookending of precipitation. That sounds stupid, but yeah. But
no, you're right.
Basically, like it's like a spring, like youthful precipitation, and it kind of rises and it goes to like a clearing, and then there's action, and then at the end, it's like a death. It's like the snow at the end. It's like a death of their relationship, and at that point, you just feel like you've gone from seeing all this color, like we've talked about this whole time, like it's like so much color and life and vibrancy, to this just like clear white. And it's like, even the clear white of it it's not just about like not seeing like wallpaper or whatever. Like a lot of the colors that you see throughout the film are like the sets of the staging of everything and people's clothing and stuff. But at the end, just the precipitation, just the snow is doing the work of the color and it's being lack of color. And it's so cool. Like, I mean, it just like really like brings everything to an end and like kind of shows you like, oh, yep, that's where we are now. Like, and then, you know, Demi gets what he wants. Like, that's when you cry. Like he wanted to make everybody cry. So
there's something about snow in a movie that just, it's peaceful. There's a sense of forlornness, if that's the word.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's tranquil at the same time. The Japanese have a word for this. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but
I'm sure they do. That sounds
at the end of Ikiru. The ending of Ikiru comes to mind. The death scene in the park. It's just, it's sad, but it's peaceful. It's pretty.
It's like a nice sad.
It is. It's almost like a contented sad. You know,
it's like a Fiona Apple song. Like it's a good sad.
Yeah. And it helped that we didn't see that kind of weather at all throughout the entire movie. The movie takes place over a period of 5-6 years, something like that, and we never see any snow until that final scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Geneviève, ma petite Geneviève.
Guy, je t'aime. Tu sens l'essence.
C'est un parfum comme un autre.
Guy, je t'aime. Oh Guy, je t'aime. Un client, je me sauve à 8 heures devant le théâtre.
I do have to tell you, there were a couple of things, like I love getting to the end of it and everything, but I do have to tell you, there were a couple of things I wanted to mention about things that I've always noticed throughout the film that I think are really cool and like maybe not everybody notices or whatever. And so just have to point them out. Like, so Cassard, well, Genevieve's husband,
the diamond dealer. Yeah.
Diamond merchant.
Diamond merchant dealer. Yeah.
Yeah. So he seems like a super cool guy. Like he seems nice, like, not to shit on him. But at the same time, when they're walking along, do you remember the scene where they're walking along like the river or like the water, and he's trying to get her to marry him? And he's talking about how he doesn't care. He'll raise the kid. It's cool. It's awesome. Whatever. Mm-hmm. Remember that scene?
I do.
And so he says, I love you. And if you don't speak French, you might not notice that he says, je vous aime. So that's not how you say, I love you to someone. Like you say, je t'aime, because that's familiar. Mm-hmm. Like je vous aime is like how Beyonce would say, I love you to her audience. Like, I love all of you.
Sure.
Or it's like if you don't know someone at all, you would say, I love you, but
there's not that really familiarity,
work, right?
Right.
It doesn't really work if you don't know someone and then you're trying to use the not familiar style of the word, right? Like he's saying, I love you, but he's not comfortable enough with her to say it in the way that Guy does 2 scenes before or whatever, right?
Right.
So it's this whole thing where it's like you see all these little things throughout that kind of pop up in just the French language that are really interesting, that I think are cool. And then also the other thing about French is like it doesn't have the same sort of emphasis that we have. So like when we speak in English, like we have very strong emphasis on different syllables. And French is already very smooth. And so the way that you pronounce things is very even. And so when you put them in a musical form, it's even more even. And so it just like, it feels like it flows into it more easily. So I feel like, I don't know if this would work if it weren't in French.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't know if you could do it in English.
It's a weird way to make a movie, and it might just be lightning in a bottle. That might be why all of the attempts at making a movie, a musical, where it's one long, continuously sung thing, just haven't worked quite as well as this one has. Maybe the French language itself is partially to credit for that. Yeah. Yeah, and the way of I guess, what's his name? Legrand. Was it him that referred to the movie as a jazz opera? Is that what he called it?
Jazz opera. And what else did he say about it? He was like, it's like, I wrote it down. Oh, it's like touching reality without really entering it.
Ah, okay. Sure.
Like, all right, Frenchman.
Yeah.
I really dug all of his, little things that he said during the interview on the Criterion version where the guy's like trying to convince him that he should just be Mozart instead of doing any sort of other work in music, because he's so smart and all of his responses were so great. And like he would say things like, form upsets convention sometimes, and it, like he will say things like that, and then like, we wanted to create an ethereal electric dream. And it's like, okay, yeah, I love it.
That whole interview, you're right. That guy kept asking the most dickish questions where he was calling the guy's integrity into question for working on a lowly art form like film, when he could be making.
He was like, why would you do this instead of being Beethoven? He's like, do you think you could be Beethoven? Like if you quit doing this shit?
Immediately he said, No.
It's like, I'm doing this. F off.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. So we apparently recommend the Criterion extras.
We do. And as a matter of fact, Did you watch this on DVD?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I did too. Okay. I'm sure this looks wonderful on Blu-ray. It is available on Blu-ray now, as a matter of fact. And just the other day, right the day after you and I decided to do a podcast on this movie, someone I know at work, they were like, "Oh, I took off on Tuesday because of the Criterion flash sale. And I got a box set so that I could watch," here I go, Les Parapluies de Cherbourg.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a Demi box set that I think was recently released on Criterion that on Blu-ray.
Young Girls is really good too. Like you should definitely watch that. Like it's fun. Like there is a ton of dancing in that one. Gotta say, like as we've talked about how this one's not about dancing. Demi talks about how in moving into that movie, he was like, now I want to make people like laugh and.
Right. I want people to walk out of the theater singing and dancing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So he was like, I made people cry. Now let's do the other thing.
Sure.
Yeah. I love it.
I love Demi's, the guy just had a lot of chutzpah. He flat out wanted to make, he said, when I'm old and I'm dying and I look back on my career, my body of work, I want to see 50 films, each with overlapping characters. This guy had his own little shared universe going on.
Yeah.
The Diamond Merchant.
Right. Was in Lola.
He was in Lola, the movie before this, a movie or two before this. So there's overlapping characters. And I think this is the middle part of his romantic trilogy. Roland was previously unsuccessfully wooed the title character in Lola, which was 1961. This movie is 1964. And then what was the third one? Young Girls of
Rochefort.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've never been more self-conscious of my Mississippi accent.
It's okay.
I feel like we're about done here, Maggie. Are you feeling that way too?
Yeah.
Let's see. What have we not talked about with this movie? Let me pull up a page here.
I do have a bunch of stuff. I don't know if you really want to actually get into it. But,
what do you have?
Okay, so another huge thing that seems like maybe something you wouldn't notice on first watching, or maybe you would, I don't know, how the scenery interacts with the people. So there are a lot of, and this was something that was brought up on that Criterion documentary. But it's like when you see the people, like what they're wearing and how they look and how they feel, sometimes that interacts with the backgrounds. And I feel like that's really interesting, especially with Geneviève, because with Geneviève, you'll see that she is usually wearing clothes that are like denim or white, or like she's wearing different colors. And they don't match everything. Whereas her mom, like, always matches the shot. Like her mom is like red and she's against a red background, or orange against an orange background. And so the people kind of match where they are. The point where that changes is when Geneviève kind of accepts that she's going to have to marry Cassard. Like she's like, okay, I guess I've given up on Guy. Mom's like, you got to get over that Guy. And, I've got to do it. And you go from one scene where she is separate from her surroundings to the next scene where she is literally matching the wallpaper. Like she is wearing a maternity dress that is like satin with a print that is the exact same print as the wallpaper. So she's literally blending in to the wallpaper, right? And I don't know, like I feel like you have to watch it a couple times before you notice that kind of thing. But like she definitely is the one person in the movie where she stands out against everything. And then all of a sudden she's subsumed into everything.
I don't think I did notice that.
Okay. Well, go back and look on your next viewing, Jason. Yeah. But anyway, like
I will. I'm going to watch it again. Matter of fact.
But like all the bright and peppy stuff, like just seems more, it's like sadder in contrast, right? So like when you see her in the blended in bright wallpaper dress, like it just seems so much sadder because it's bright. Like it like the way that Demi uses all of the color is not just to make it colorful. You know, he shows, like we were talking about, like he shows in his next one, like he shows in Young Girls, he can do bright and peppy that means to be bright and peppy. But what he's doing here with bright and peppy is showing you how sad shit is. Like he's making it worse by making it colorful, like by
giving us that juxtaposition,
exactly,
that visual juxtaposition.
Yeah. So
good stuff. Maggie, how do you feel about it?
I feel like I love it. I feel like it's the best movie ever and everybody should watch it.
I give it my recommendation too.
Oh, good. Yay.
Yeah.
I just feel like even now, like even 2021, it's the only thing that's like it. Like it's its own thing, and it's the only thing that I like in the same way. Like I like a lot of other movies in different ways, but this is the only one that I like this. And I think that everybody else should like it like this too.
Yeah, it stands alone. It is a creature unlike any other. Yeah. Maggie, thanks so much. I appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, Jason. Great to talk to you too.
Of course. All right. Take care.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
J'ai fini.
C'est très beau.
Tu trouves? Tu as les mains froides. Je vais sortir maintenant.
And that's it for this episode. Give us a follow, won't you, over at Instagram. You can find us there at filmography_club_podcast. I'd also like to encourage you to give us a rating, maybe even a nice review wherever you get your podcast from. It's available everywhere. Every little bit helps. I want to thank my guest, Maggie Lyon. I'd also like to thank Will Fox, Ross Warner, and Michael Leeds. Filmography Club is produced right here in gorgeous Nashville, Tennessee by the always hardworking folks at We Own This Town. I'm Jason Caviness. This is Filmography Club. Thank you for listening.